Well, joining me now from Miami is Michael Szanto. He's a foreign policy expert. Michael, thanks for being with us. And as we're discussing, thank you. As we're discussing, Beijing is Pyongyang's only significant long-standing ally. How do you think China is seeing this pledge from North Korea to denuclearize?
Well, it's unclear because there have been difficulties between these close allies in recent years, so they're not always on the same path. But I think that China shares the interest of the United States to prevent a war. So I think that China is committed to having North Korea denuclearize.
Well, what role do you see Beijing then taking in this denuclearization process, assuming that it is sincere and that it does get underway and in that 2.5-year time frame that Pompeo has stipulated? Do you see Beijing taking a role there?
Yes, I see them taking a very major role because North Korea is not going to trust the United States entirely, but China doesn't want North Korea to be reintegrated with South Korea, so that China is the only country that North Korea can try to rely upon to try to help protect some of their interests. But I think in the larger picture, China shares more interest with the United States because we're large trading partners, and China is also a major trade partner with South Korea and Japan.
Michael, China does not want regime collapse and chaos on its border. To your point, it also doesn't want a reunified Korean peninsula, especially if it's under U.S. influence. So what does China want out of this whole situation?
Well, North Korea and the United States government were in a head-on collision. That was the path that we were on in the past year, if not longer, because North Korea was advancing their nuclear weapons project far faster than predicted. They tested a thermonuclear warhead, 200 kilotons, that could fit on an ICBM, and they tested an ICBM that could basically hit Washington, D.C. And so they were in the final preparations of actually deploying such a weapon. The United States cannot accept this. They refuse to basically disarm their nuclear program, so we're in a head-on collision. So the war would be devastating in the Korean Peninsula and really, really go against the interests of the United States and China. So that is China's #1 objective. Because they don't want North Korea to be integrated in South Korea, they might not always show their cards to the extent that their main objective is preventing war. I would say that's their top objective.
Yeah, probably maintaining the status quo kind of works for China. Let's address the sanctions. China accounts for up to 90% of North Korea's trade with the outside world, so clearly in a tremendous position of power here. Now, Beijing indicated that it would soften sanctions on North Korea. Pompeo saying that China says sanctions will stay in place following his meeting with Xi Jinping. How reliable do you think China is here in keeping up its end regarding the sanctions?
Well, they don't want, as you said, regime change. They don't want something to destabilize it, and they prefer politically the status quo. So sometimes they may not completely align their sanctions enforcement with the United States. But I do not believe that they entirely trust this North Korean government. They definitely don't entirely get along with it. So they do not want them to have a major nuclear program that's completely out of control. So I think to a larger extent, we share interests with China. And so they are not going to let the North Koreans off the hook. But if they feel that our pressure is too great and threatens to completely destabilize the regime, China on its own could selectively not fully enforce international sanctions when they do not feel it's in their interests.
Michael, what do we need to see from North Korea as its next step to indicate that it is sincere, that that was a genuine pledge to denuclearize?
Oh, we have got to get major international inspectors in and major compliance measures. There has to be inspectors on the ground. They have to basically be able to search anywhere with practically no notice. The North Koreans have to verifiably give up a great deal of nuclear materials and, unfortunately, potentially viable nuclear weapons. They have to put put new safeguards and reactors capable of producing plutonium. They need to give up their centrifuges in a verifiable way. There needs to be absolutely very concrete steps made that are totally verifiable before we can really start to consider lessening sanctions.
Well, there needs to be denuclearization completely, according to the Trump administration, before there is any kind of sanction relief. But in the meantime, there was definitely a rapport, if you will, between Trump and Kim. Is there a chance that North Korea flips on China through this and forms a stronger relationship with the U.S.? We saw that in 1972 when China distanced itself from the Soviet Union in favor of the U.S. after Nixon visited Mao in Beijing. Is there a remote chance that Kim flips and does this?
Probably not. We're talking about very different governments. The China realignment, also the Chinese were facing a Soviet Union that they were increasingly hostile with. So they had a common enemy. We don't share a common enemy with North Korea. China's not our enemy. They're a major trading partner. We don't have this all-out Cold War that we had with the Soviets. And, you know, the North Korean government is almost cult-like. If anything, I'm always worried that they'll go Branch Davidian on us rather than they'll become our new friends. I don't see them becoming like the Chinese in Sunny II or Sadat later with Camp David, where he threw out the Soviets, made peace with Israel. We'll never have that kind of relationship. That's doubtful. But the fact that President Trump got along with him very well might actually pay off in achieving that what was almost unthinkable, that they voluntarily give up their nuclear weapons entirely.
Interesting stuff. Thanks so much, as always, foreign policy expert Michael Szanto. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome.